Gusset, and welcome to my new podcast. My name is Sally, and you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Ravelry as WoolDiaries. I am a proudly South African citizen. I was born in England, Sussex, but have been here since 1981. I live in Joburg, in Sandton, which is a suburb north of the city. I am a stay-at-home mom who married well. I have two fantastic boys. I have a 15-year-old who is in grade 8, and I have a 10-year-old who is in grade 4. My children both attend private school here in South Africa. I am a rugby mad mom, and neither of my boys play rugby. I support the Pretoria team, which is Blue Bulls, and I support the Springboks, of course, and I support England because in the Six Nations I need a team to scream for. I am a little bit of a petrol head. I love cars, not so much motorbikes. I love cars. I love watching the Formula One. I support Hamilton and Button. So let's move into what you come here for. And that's what I watch most of my podcasts for, is what are you knitting and what have you knitted? So what I've knitted this month so far is, let me finish this round. I'm almost finished. My Halloween socks. Yes, there are two. See? There you go. 2 Halloween socks. They are orange, purple, and grey. Oops. These are a BFL sock base that was dyed for me, and only me, by my friend Tanya on Ravelry, because I have been complaining that I can't get my hands on proper self-striping sock yarn in South Africa. So she dyed these for me. Yes, they don't have nylon in them, so I'm going to wear them normally, but thankfully, because they are my Halloween socks, they'll only be worn once a month. Well, no, not once a month, chop. Once a year during October. I haven't worn them yet because I wanted to show them on the podcast. I knew that. So what I did on this one is I did a rounded toe, which is a free pattern on Ravelry by Tanya Murray. I did the Fish Lips Kiss Heel, which is a $1 pattern on Ravelry from Sock Therapist. And then the bind off. I have been loath to do toe up socks because I don't like the way they flare at the top. It's some of my funny quirks that you'll learn about me. I don't like the way they flare. So what Tiny Giraffe suggested to me was, well, why don't you use the surprisingly stretchy bind off, but don't do it on every stitch. Do it on every second stitch. So the knit, sorry, that was just my phone. The knit stitch, I did a normal cast off, and the purl stitch on the rib, I used the surprisingly stretchy bind off. And as you can see, it doesn't flare, but it does have a lot of give to it. So I think that's going to be my bind off from now onwards. I knit my socks using magic loop. I do not care for devil pointed needles. The laddering I get with devil pointed needles is horrific. And that's something I can't live with. I just can't. And the fact that there's just so many needles and no. I use size on these ones because the BFL was a lot thinner. I used size 2mm needles. And I increased my toe to 72 stitches. So that was the first thing I finished. I finished those socks in 6 days. 6 days. My aim as a new sock knitter is to knit a pair of socks, one pair of socks every month until I have enough to wear a pair of handmade socks for every day in the months of in a month that we have winter. We're currently in spring, summer. Oh. Thank you, Northern Hemisphere, for giving us the sun back. Right, what else have I finished? One of my phone friends, and VKN friends, her mom was diagnosed with cancer. And now they caught it early, so bonus. She's busy with chemo. She's had her first set of chemo. Now, I've had lots of friends, and only one member of my family go through chemo, and it's hard. It's hard. To hear about it is different to witness it. When it's hard. I don't want to go into it. I don't. So anyway, being a knitter, I'm thinking, I need to do something. I can't not do something. I know my friend is in Cape Town, but her mom lives in Pretoria, and she's coming up at the end of the month to see her mom and to help out with her mom while her dad goes overseas. So, being a knitter again, I have to do something. So I went into my stash and I found, oh, that's very yellow. It's not actually yellow. No, that's not working. It's actually coming out more yellow. Okay, it's a mustard color. It's not a yellow. And I made the Cora Ode to Downton Abbey hat. I hate wearing hats because I cut all my hair off and I look bald, even though I'm not. Okay, so what it is you knit a garter stitch band, and then you cast off some stitches, and then you just join in the round and you knit away. Yeah. This pattern was used to motivate the South African group who are having a knit along to knit a pattern that has 10 projects or less in it. So this hat only had, I think, 4 or 5 projects when I knit mine. It was a very easy pattern, very quick. It took me less than a day to make. What would I do differently? I wouldn't knit it as long as it says, especially for someone who is losing their hair or has short hair like me. Yes, I wouldn't have knitted it as long as what it says in the pattern. But apart from that, very good pattern, very easy to follow, very simple. I put an incomparable button on it, a flower, because her mom said she liked hats with something different. So I used that. I love these buttons, incomparable buttons. They're made in South Africa. They are clay. However, I do have to put a warning. I find that they break in washing. So I find they break in washing machines. I have decided that on the safe side, I will put them on items that can be hand washed or will not be washed as often. The last project that I've made already this month is the Tubular Toque, which is another name for beanie. It's a pattern by Patti Waters. At the end of last year, Patti Waters offered up all her patterns for free as part of her honeymoon celebrations, which was fantastic. There were so many of her patterns. And I think for offering up all her patterns for free, the least we could do as knitters after downloading them all was to actually knit some. So I went and I looked at, and I found this hat, which I had some stash that would have fitted very nicely with. I used Nurturing Fibres Merino DK singles in the colourway Rosewood. The pattern, like I said, was free during the last year, 2013. But normally it's $4.95 on Ravelry. So here's my version of it, and I'll tell you that one now. Again with the hat and the short hair. Right, so the Tubular Toque. It's a twisted rib band, and then it's lace up until the crown decreases. I don't know if you can see the crown decreases. Up until the crown decreases. Now, I had limited yardage of the Nurturing Fibres, and I knew I couldn't make it as long as what the pattern said. The pattern said I wanted 2.5 inches or 2 inches of twisted rib, and then 12 inches of the lace pattern before you started the decreases. Now, to me, on the pattern picture, it looks like a very long, slouchy beanie, and I'm not too sure if my friend's mom likes that style, but I didn't have the yardage to do it anyway. So I did 7, well, I tried 8, but I had to take back 7 rounds of the lace pattern. I did 1.5 inches of the twisted rib. I did 7 inches of the lace, and then I did the decreases on it. I think it's very pretty. I wouldn't mind one myself when my hair gets a bit longer. Not that we used hats this winter, it wasn't cold enough. I'm hoping that the lace isn't, because it's quite knobbly inside. Oh, dog hair. I'll show you the part with dog hair. It's quite knobbly inside, and it washes the colour out. And I'm worried that that knobbly will be too much on a sensitive head. But she can always gift it to somebody else. I'm not that much attached to gifts that I make. I'm such a bad podcaster already. My my Cora Ode to Downton Abbey. This is a pattern by Lenora Hopkins. I knit it out of Rowan Pure Wool DK in the colourway, wait for it, 00051. I used, for both of them, I used the recommended needle size. No, I did not do a gauge swatch. Wow, this is quite stretchy. No, I did not do a gauge swatch. I don't gauge swatch for hats. They either come out too big or they come out too small. I can always find somebody to wear them. I have lots of nieces and nephews who do live in cold climates. So, those are what I've already made this month. Now, granted, it's 3 projects, and we are on the 14th of the month. I do not see this as a huge amount of knitting for me. I'm having a case of I want to cast on all the things, but I don't have stash to cast on all the things. The project that I'm busy with, I cast on last night. I am making myself another pair of socks. The boys are back at school, and I need socks to knit on while I'm waiting in the car at various times in the day for various reasons. So, with my sock knitting, not only am I trying to get minimum 31 pairs of socks, I am also trying to use different brands of sock yarn. So I've used Regia, which I love. I absolutely love Regia. If I only was allowed to knit with Regia, that would be fine by me. It's a bit rough in the beginning, but it does soften up after washing. I have used BFL, which was from Tiny Giraffe. I have used Nurturing Fibres Super Twist Sock Yarn. I have used Katia, which is not a South African yarn either. I've made 2 pairs out of that. And I'm trying to think what, oh, a Stash Addicts yarn from England. She no longer dyes anymore though. And that's it. So what I've done is I've sorted out my sock yarn bin, and I've put on the very top all the yarn dyers, manufacturers that I haven't used yet. Oh, and I've used L sock wool, which is a merino nylon blend. It's very soft and very squishy. The colors are, I wish they would come up with more vibrant colors. They're very dull and muted, but it's a South African, the L is our big South African manufacturer. It's very affordable, but like I said, I wish they would come up with some more vibrant colors. They're very dull and muted. So this month's socks, not socks, because I've already made socks this month. This month's second pair of socks and second new to me dyer and base, not base, is Yarn Stash PMB, which means Peter Maritzburg, which is in Natal. It's 100% merino. It's 100 grams. It's about 313 meters, and you can see the needle gauge is 2.5. The colorway is 42, and yes, I paid 95 Rand for it. I bought this yarn from a stand at Hobby X, which is a hobby convention market that we have in Johannesburg in March. I bought it this year, so it's fairly recent purchase. I am using the Rounded Toe by Tanya Murray, and I want to try a different heel. So I'm going to try the double gusset on bottom toe up sock by Carrie Ramirez. I'm not following her toe. I do prefer the rounded toe. It fits my toes better than the normal toe up, normal every second round increase. So I am doing these on my normal size 2.25. Oops, before I start another round, let me show you what they look like. It reminds me of, I don't know, a painting. I didn't know what to expect when I took out this skein of yarn. So that is the back of the socks, which I like more than the front of the socks. That is the front of the socks. The front of the socks to me look a little bit more muted, and I wanted to focus. Look a little bit more muted and, I don't know, muted. I don't mind pooling on my socks. I have come to discover that little quirks that I have while I'm knitting other items do not apply to socks. My self-striping socks I just made don't match, and that's fine by me. I don't have a problem. The variegation, I like the pooling and the flashing. I'm not opposed to pooling and flashing, just I won't wear it in a jersey or anything else. This is what the cake looks like. You get it from Yarn Stash in a cake. You don't get a skein, you get a cake. Mine's kind of falling apart because mine's been bashed around in my sock bin. But it does the trick. It does the trick. So hopefully next week, when I record again, I know, heaven help you, you're going to get it every week. I will have if not a hoe, close to a hoe. I would like to have a half-hour podcast. I love watching longer podcasts. I love listening to longer podcasts. I, however, do understand that people don't have the time or the bandwidth in this country to watch a half-hour podcast, an hour podcast. My aim is to have one out every week. However, as I am a stay-at-home mom, it means some Tuesdays my boys will be home. On those Tuesdays, it will depend on the mood of my boys. If you are South African, please come and join us on the South African group. We are really trying to make it the place for South African knitters and crocheters and weavers and spinners. If it has to do with yarn and fibre, we want it to be done on the South African board, in the South African group. We have various different knit groups. I run the one in Johannesburg called the Yarmies. We meet at Sandton every second Saturday. There is a Cape Town. There are two Cape Town knitting groups. One meets once a month. They both meet once a month. One meets, I think, on the first Saturday, and the other one meets on the third Saturday. But don't hold me to that. The details are in the Ravelry group, the South African Ravelry group. There is another one in Pretoria East that meets every Tuesday morning. It's also in the South African group, the details. We have a virtual knit night, which I host every other second Saturday night. So this weekend being the 18th, I think, of October, we are having a virtual knit night. All the details of how you join, who's going to be there, it's all on the South African, in the South African group. I'm debating whether or not to start a new group for this podcast. I will see. At the moment, I'm not going to. I'm heavily involved in trying to get the South African group back up and running and more active and keep the membership growing and to involve our new members in South Africa. If you are a South African yarn dyer, if you are a South African yarn manufacturer, if you're a South African designer, please contact me on Ravelry so I can add your details. If you are a South African Etsy shop and you have anything to sell to the yarn and fiber industry, please let me add you to our group. The other day I found a new to me South African designer and a new to me South African dyer that I'd never even heard of before. We currently have a competition running, 2 competitions running in the South African group. We have one that is the knit along or crochet along, which you've got, I mentioned earlier, you've got to complete a pattern that has 10 or less projects in it. I have been known to allow a project that states they are more finished, but actually only if you click on the number of projects made, there are less pictures than what the project. So if the projects say 12 and you click on it and there's only 8 pictures, then I have been known to say, yes, you can do that pattern. And that is running, that's run from the 1st of October to the end of October. There are prizes, I'm busy working on them, and as soon as they are available for view, I will post them on the thread. The other competition that's been running in the South African group at the moment is, it started yesterday. Sally Jane, Pink Hair Girl, who has the amazing Pink Hair Girl podcast. If you want to see a proper South African podcast, go look at that one. She released an ebook, and you can get a hard copy of it, soft copy, proper book of it, called Mzansi, South Africa on My Needles. The competition is simple. You got to go, look at the patterns, come back, reply to her thread, her post, saying which pattern you would like to knit, and ear burn one of your friends. And what you will get is, on the 27th of October, Sally Jane will do a random number generator, and she'll choose a winner, and you and the person that you ear burn in the thread will win the pattern from the collection. The collection is fantastic. There's hats, cows, the cutest stinking baby jersey ever, mittens, fingerless mittens, I said hats, shawls. Yes, there's 50, and socks. There's 15 patterns. I'm going to go before I carry on waffling too much. I will see you next week. I hope to record on Tuesday again. So, tot ziens.